we're talking about races while we were during the commercial break, and there is a mixed bag, because you think that the House races are not going to go well for the Republicans, but it looks like in the statewide races, with the exception of superintendent, probably going to stay solid red.
Yeah, I believe so, because I think there's just other dynamics besides polling, which is a snapshot in time. I firmly believe that numbers just don't move. It's what the campaigns and also the national fervor that's going on. For example, when you look at the caravan issue, immigration went up 7 or 8 points on top issue. Before, education was the #1 issue all year. Actually, immigration now overtook that spot, and education dropped down, which probably losing some of the momentum out of that Red for Ed movement because their ballot initiative got knocked off. So you see those kind of dynamics. So I think once you kind of know the full picture, it makes you, it gives you much more accuracy. Because again, numbers just frankly don't move. So when you look at these House races right now, is that they're typically very competitive, but even in good Republican years, they're tough ones to win. But in House races in general, you need that national money to frankly win, because if you see the NRCC not spending money, which they pulled out of Arizona's 2nd district, I don't believe they're spending in the 9th district or in the 1st district. So when you see that, and of course the other side spending, you got to overcome 10 ads that say you're a terrible person compared to 1 ad saying you're great. And so when you look at those numbers, I just think in this election year that those others will be able to hold it off. But for traditional swing seats that are already typically a Democrat held, they lean that way. I just think they're going to be out of reach for this cycle. Some
elections seem to be issue driven and others are candidate driven. This started out in my mind as an issue driven campaign with Red for Ed. When that ballot initiative got knocked out, now it seems to be a candidate driven one with McSally and Sinema. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say that right now that we're seeing is that we're definitely more politically divided than ever before. So I think it's less about issues and more about attacking one's character or their party or their stances. So I think, it's interesting about the Senate race is that this is hands down historically the most amount of money ever spent. I think we're actually on track, may actually break $100 million, which is insane to say for Arizona purposes. So, but there's a lot on the line, because when you look at the national map right now is that, Nevada and Arizona are the main ones that Democrats have targeted and they think they can flip. And so that's where it is more than likely that Republicans will probably hold the Senate. However, the House looks less likely on a national scale.
When you go into your methodology that has given you 11 for 11 in these predictions, what is it that you do differently? Do you believe that you do differently than other people?
I feel like it's almost common sense. However, it's just different. Everyone does their polling differently. And I would say that it's asking the right questions to the right people, and then also having the right makeup of the electorate, because that's key. Because you've seen polls that come out. We know right now voting, more than half of the votes already in. If you look at it, it's about 43% or so, 42% Republicans that have already voted. Democrats are about 33%, and then independents around 23%. So you look at that, but like you had, I think it was the NBC poll or possibly the CNN, one of them had, of their sample was 50% independents, 25% Republican, 25% Democrats. So like you have to do a lot of weighting, but then those Republicans and Democrats are almost 2 to 1, and then of course you're suppressing down the independents. So I just think that it's very important to get an accurate reflection based on region, having Maricopa County, which is 62% of the vote, Pima County, roughly 16% of the vote, and then rural Arizona. And then you have gender, you have party affiliation, and then, of course, you have age. So making sure you have it, like a lot of those polls had 18 to 34-year-olds at about 16% turnout. I think that's pretty unrealistic. They're typically in the single-digit range. So it's just making sure you have that reflective sample. But, of course, the only thing that can make the polls different is people that come out to vote. But usually in midterms, it's the same folks that come out and vote. So that's really the trick. But of course, let's say of the 4 million or so odd registered voters, they actually all came out and voted. Well, that's probably a lot different than we've ever seen before, and that will really change the game. So I think voter participation is a big key as well.
So last question is, because we got about a minute left. On election night, do you look at it differently than others do? Are you looking at it for the accuracy of your polling? Are you really kind of giving yourself a report card?
Oh yeah, of course. But it's also in the time you're polling, especially with early voting, is that so you poll just before ballots go, but then that number gets smaller, so those votes are in the bank, and so you're looking at this number, and it's kind of like a shrinking. So like let's say you're up at the beginning of early voting, but you get halfway through, you've lost some points, or let's say you're down a little bit. Again, how many votes are already in the bank? So I think it's just really interesting that looking at how close, but of course there's other factors that come into play. So I think it's part of the polling, but making a prediction. That's why I think we said we've seen that everything's kind of trending in McSally's direction, and so we're one of the few that are going to say actually say, hey, it's anyone's ball game. We're going to make a prediction. We think it lands a break in McSally's way at the end of the day.
One of the smartest guys in the entire country when it comes to polling. OH Predictive Insights and Mike Noble. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate
We'll be
it.
back.